Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Milwaukee Brew City Power Platform User Group with Anthony, Steve, and Mike.
Hello.
Anthony, how's it going?
Hey guys, how's it going? Doing good, doing good. Yeah, really exciting stuff. I mean, Ignite, now that the dust has kind of settled a little bit, I think that this recap is like much needed. There's been a lot of things that have come out even since Ignite. So I think that all of these things are up in the air right now in terms of conversation that we want to hit today. There's a lot to talk about, more than an hour's worth, so we'll have to be kind of picky on how we do this.
So feel free. We also monitor social media stuff as well. So if you're following us along in LinkedIn or YouTube, feel free to comment along. Write your comments, write your questions. If you have things you want to say, feel free to add those in the comment area. We'll be able to catch those and capture them and respond back.
We've definitely got the whole team here, so we'll be focusing on the whole Power Platform, or some of the team stuff as well. Definitely look at some of these new integrations that's coming out between the Power Platform. If you've watched me and Anthony before, our stuff, focuses a lot on the Power Apps and the interactions between the other. And Mike runs the Power BI focused one as well. So definitely going to come at it from a whole Power Platform, see how everything is really coming together. That continued push from Microsoft to make everything easier.
We just had a user group meeting yesterday, Tuesday, for the Power BI side of the Milwaukee Brew City, and actually it was Chicago. Tommy was presenting, and it was pretty impressive to see how much of the Power Platform was being utilized and could be utilized by a business user. We actually had a pretty elaborate discussion around where does your skill set sit? Are you IT? Are you business? What business tools are you using? Do you need to have Azure experience if you're working in Power BI all the time or working in Power Apps? What's the breakpoint? If I'm a Power BI user, do I need to know Power BI and Power Apps? So I think realistically, the tools that we're looking at now, particularly for the Power Platform, they are very different, and they're enabling not normal people, but like they're enabling a non-IT facing audience to really do some very powerful things with their business. I think we're at a cusp here. We're seeing a trend that's changing the direction of how people develop processes and applications that I think is really cool. So I'm really excited to see how all this stuff is tying together, and the Microsoft is investing a lot of really good dollars into making the Power Platform even richer. So super thrilled about this.
And I think beyond that, kind of in the back end as well, outside the Power Platform with some of the upgrades we'll go through, Purview, Synapse, it's really becoming tied into the whole Microsoft ecosystem, and even that back end, which is typically very difficult to manage, it is becoming a lot easier for business users and people to get into. So a whole trend, I think, overall by Microsoft aligning a lot of different products, which is really cool.
I don't think the my traditional experience has been in the IT space, right? Everything from like Synapse backend, data SQL data, like all of that was traditionally managed by a single team, because there was actually machines on premise you'd have to stand up and put up. And now that we're talking with cloud, I mean, it's much easier for me to click a couple buttons and turn on a SQL server. There's a lot more of that management that I don't have to do anymore. And I think this is opening up another whole realm of users to be able to use this technology for relatively low cost and to get started easily and learn this stuff quickly. So I'm thrilled to, I'm very happy. Anyone who's in the data space, I think you've picked a good career to be in, because I feel like you're going to be in the long haul for this one.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's all I'm hearing is about how these data engineers are getting sucked up everywhere. It's
hard to
crazy,
find them.
the need for data engineers right now. It's
Yeah.
it's a really big space, and that's where, I mean, that's almost like your, and it doesn't have to be entry level, but that is a lot of times where people start in those spaces, and there's a huge need for it, and it's really exciting to see that. I mean, it's just like, like the nursing, right? It's there's things that we're gonna need.
Yes.
And data is one of them. And then also,
yes.
Obviously nursing. It's those types of things that it's really interesting to see the shift in trends.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, Anthony, I think you've got a couple slides here. I'll kick it over to you for slides and stuff. So let me just zip over here to slides. All right, we should be good. You have your slide up and rocking and rolling.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So what we'll do here today, and these are going to be strictly for just topic purposes. We're not going to follow these, like the Bible here. We're just going to make sure that, we pull it up and it's just something to have a conversation about. if anybody in the comments here, if you guys have anything that you want to bring up in terms of if we didn't cover it or if we did cover it, and you just want,
Yeah.
to add your 2 cents, like everything here is just, conversational.
Yep.
Between us three, it's going to be a really fun time. We all have our individual spaces that we like to live in, and then we're very excited about some of these things that are coming out.
Mhm.
So, I guess sit back, enjoy the ride, and comment as much as you can if that's possible. So
Excellent.
with that, I just have my little cap up there. It's going over, from you're graduating. It's been another year around the sun. This is one thing. Now we have 2 ignites every year. So now it's from March to November. So it's interesting to see how many updates have now already come out since March that they even need to have a second ignite. So with that, our light agenda, light quote unquote, would be that there's a number of Power Platform topics that are out there, and that's where I think what we can do, we can back into these, we'll use them as topics.
Mhm.
But Steve and Mike, I know that you guys live on both sides of the fence here, so feel free we can change gears at any time because I certainly have more content than what we can do in an hour. So with that, I think one of the most fun things in the Power Platform, and I kind of prioritize these from most important to me, top down. So you'll see some of these pop up front.
It's okay,
Is
Anthony.
that the native mobile?
We'll let you drive.
Native mobile app.
We'll let you drive there. Awesome. This is a good
And I
feature.
guess,
Explain, like, so what does this, like, what was this previously? So, like, talk us through, like, what was the feature originally, and what is it? What functionality is this adding to us now?
sure. Let me just zoom into the image there. This is the stock one that you can get off their blog. So I grabbed it off. They did a really good job of kind of showing what that different interface is going to look like. So the end user experience is really what they're tackling here. It's really nothing else. Where the end users used to have to download Power Apps, they'd have to somehow find their app inside of this space that you can search in.
Mhm.
Typically, if you're in an organization and you're beyond, I guess you're beyond that initial stage of adoption, you're going to have a lot of apps that are shared with you. Some people are sharing widely with everybody. You're getting shared to apps that you don't use, but you can't tell them to stop sharing to you. It's just something that you don't have control over, which actually I put in, speaking of which, I've actually put in a note on that, hoping that, we can exclude ourselves from things like this, because something like this screen here, when you're looking for an app, it's not, it's, I guess when you look for something, it's really tough to find what you're looking for when there's so many different apps that are out there. What we're going to see now with the native experience is that you can actually deploy these to an actual mobile phone. So through an MDM solution, you can deploy that to someone's phone where they don't have to download Power Apps. They don't have to search for it. It's directly on their phone, and it opens up as if you downloaded OneDrive or Teams. It opens up like a native app.
So there's a couple things that I think that are worthwhile pointing out here. And I mean, again, this is going to kind of span the gamut of people who are building apps. So burying your app inside a Power App was a good solution. It was able to get it to the store on my phone, but the distribution of that native app now, I think, adds another whole layer of richness here. So, and I think this works on most. This is going to be the Microsoft Apps Player for Android and iOS, and you'll be able to, like, link into this. Basically, you can have your organization push down to your phone a native application as if it was built on your phone, like going to the App Store, looking like it was there. I don't see anything in the documentation yet, but I don't think they're submitting the apps to App Store directly. It's all about using their MDM solutions to kind of push the app into your device. Is that kind of right, Anthony, or how you read it right now?
Yeah, there's a couple different ways to do it, and there's going to be through your MDM solution. So like Intune, you would have
Yeah.
you're going to call up this app and say, I want to disperse this to my finance group, or I want to disperse this to everybody, or whoever it might be.
Sure.
I want everybody to have access to this, and then it would just show up on their phone, assuming that they kind of went through the whole process of signing in and accepting the terms of Intune and all that good stuff.
Sure.
That it would show up on their phone, and it's just one of those things, like just like the Microsoft Authenticator app. Something like that. Typically, you push through Intune, make sure everybody has it. You're using that two-step authentication. They don't have to go out and download it. It automatically shows up.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with these apps now. If it's a critical app, or it's maybe you're a field technician, you're going to be inputting data as you're walking away from clients, or as you're fixing something or taking pictures of whatever the case may be. This is now a native app that you just click on your phone, open up, and it looks, as if, you were opening up, your Teams app. So with that specifically, there is another version of that. And let me now just show you what that looks like too. So there's the Intune side of things.
Yeah.
But there's also the actual, the Microsoft App Center. So you can actually go to your tenant's App Center. You would then sign in. You would say, I want to download this app. So it gives you more of a curated experience in terms of what apps are out there and available to you. So instead of going to the Power Apps, portal on your phone, which you have to search through all these different apps, that's still not going to give you that native experience. Whereas this, you can search through and then give yourself that native experience. That's where you're going to see the big difference there. It's that that adoption that really drives a full end-to-end solution.
Yeah. And this is actually going to be available, so you're going to be able to start developing. I believe the Power Apps mobile preview starts on December 1st. So look on the Microsoft blogs or the Power Apps blog. You'll see probably messaging here fairly soon that they're going to open this up. You can start entering that developer program and start building apps locally here. I think this is a big win.
Yep.
There's a couple apps that I've written for my company internally that I use every day. It's like a time card app,
Yep.
and I'm doing the things I hop between is like a Power BI report and logging my time. I'll forget to log my time for a particular project. I'll be walking away
Right.
from my computer. I'm like, oh shoot, I'll bring up the app on my phone and just log my time there, which I think is extremely helpful. And I'm seeing a lot more use cases around simple apps, just simple things, just inputting records of data or modifying records of data here and there. Really adds a lot of functionality. So you're not having to build this monolithic, application. You can build these very lightweight, useful applications in Power Apps. So I'm really excited about this feature.
I think with the adoption is huge here. We coming from the Power Platform, we know what Power Apps is. It's quite easy for us just to say download the Power app on your phone.
Yeah.
A lot of our users though may have never even heard of Power Apps. They just want this app. To tell someone to download this Power App and then to go and look for the app, it can get quite confusing if you've not heard of Power Apps, you don't know what this is. You just want the app, really.
Yes.
Making things as simple as possible for end users is so key here, even if it's just that one less click. And I think this is a huge step in that direction, and to get really big adoption, especially for large companies with people who aren't as tech savvy or even know about the Microsoft Power Platform.
Mm-hmm. Love it.
Completely agree. And to your previous conversations that both of us, all three of us have had in the past, is now getting like Power BI reports, pages, and all that other good stuff inside of these Power Apps, that if they open up one of these apps, that it could bring them directly to something that these data insights that make sense, that they can make some decision and then also take action on that as well, right inside that app. And that actually speaks to my next point, where let's zoom in on that picture here. One of the really big features of this native app, the mobile native apps, is that now you can kind of package up multiple apps under one roof. What that means is you create this hub, so it could be like a Mike Carlo hub, and then you would have like time entry, open up that app, and it would all be part of that same package. So when you deploy it, it still feels like one app. So same thing with, it's going to be, I forget what you said. You said the time entry. What was the other one?
I do some things around Power BI reporting. So just having like example, exactly right here, there's going to be a performance page, and maybe there's a couple reports that I want to click on and go directly to a Power BI embedded report inside the Power App as well. So that's another thing that's very relevant for what I'm doing, because to me, it's only meets half the issue, right? If I can enter the data and modify it, that's half my problem. The other half is, well, what do we do with that data once it's there? If I'm not using it to look at actionable things, what's my time totals? What are we working on? What shouldn't be working on? So making decisions off of that data, that's the next step here, and that's, I think, why this makes so much sense to me.
Yeah, and I think this package is really exciting in terms of just bringing it all together. Again, to Steve's point, adoption, it's really next level what they're doing here. It's going to come out in preview in December, so I don't expect it to be perfect when it first rolls out. I don't expect there to be no hiccups. But eventually, over time, just like everything else, it's going to turn into something that's going to be very, very great. And I look forward to that. And maybe December. I mean, maybe it's not as complex as I think it is. Maybe it's just something that rolls out and it's perfect.
Well, I've also
Azure
seen
component.
Alt to Enter from YouTube is talking about, like, he's actually seeing a need or an uptick in just in general requests around Power Apps training. How do I build one? How do I get started? And I think that's going to be the general trend you're going to see here. I think you're starting to see Power Apps pick up some momentum. And if you think about like the number of apps that I integrate with in a daily basis, I mean, it's probably like 5, 6 times what I do. So I'm a Power BI person, right? I run Power BI, it runs everything I do. So of the 1 or 2 Power BI reports that I use daily, I think about how many more apps do I touch on a daily basis. I'm touching 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 apps maybe. So maybe my app usage, even on my phone, right, is potentially 3 to 5x more than if I was just doing Power BI reporting. So I see the market audience for just being able to build well-designed apps is going to be increasingly more demanding as we look forward here.
And I think one of the really big things in IT is like, well, we're going to deploy these Power Apps, but how do we control them? How do we do X, Y, or Z? But Intune also helps with that security side of things too. So I
Mm-hmm.
think we're really seeing
Agreed.
all of these different bits and pieces of the Microsoft world come together and make this type of thing possible.
Agreed.
So again, I think the possibilities are endless. It's when you're able to open up this app and have a very curated experience. Like you said, they're all going to be lightweight and very specific. So you can also tailor that experience to those, different people that are going to be using those. Again, it's just really exciting. I could talk about that for a long time.
Awesome. What's up? What other features are you guys thinking about?
Let's see here. So there's a lot in the AI builder world.
Okay. Yeah, let's go through
One
some of that.
really cool feature is that they've actually, I don't know if they've acquired this company. I should have looked this up, but they're certainly partnering with them. Lobe.ai. It's an organization. What they do is they have image classification. So it's very similar to what they actually do today inside of the AI builder, but this is going to be able to give you something that you can do local now. So you build this AI classification model on your local computer, and then you're able to import it into the AI builder inside of Power Platform.
Nice.
I guess I'll get your initial thoughts before I jump into it.
Well, I see this something as a direction Microsoft's been pushing for quite a while. They've been doing this stuff in Power BI, this low code AI machine learning. And to me, this isn't a replacement for data scientists. I see this with a couple of different types of machine learning. You still have your data scientists who typically come in and solve very complex problems, very specific, maybe optimize some stuff in your warehouse. There is a lot of AI and ML, which can be low code and for the business user to use, hugely valuable as well. And these little ads, which has been going on in Microsoft, they've been adding AI visuals and they've been adding AI in the background, and now adding a lot to the Power Apps when they had their image detection firstly announced. This is really, really cool, I think. And we don't see it because there's a lot that gets released quite slowly, and they sneak bits in, and they're sneaking bits in for ages, and it's just building and building. And I think it's a really cool direction. Still moving and still going. I think there's a lot, some uptick, I think, in usage. Some of them maybe are slower to get utilized than others, but definitely a direction they're pushing and working on hard in the background, it seems like.
So if you think about, there's a large challenge here, and when you look at like just companies in general who are doing image classification, this is a very large problem. And where I'm going to step back here from like a high level, like from an MVP perspective. Microsoft is trying to solve the hardest problems, right? They're looking across a lot of these very big AI solutions, and they're acquiring lots of data scientists. They're solving lots of problems, and they're trying to do things at scale for many organizations. And so the fact that they're partnering with this company to start accelerating labeling, unlabeling of images, one of your main challenges with having well-designed, intelligent AI models is you need a lot of labeled data to support that. And I know there's a lot of organizations that are well into the billions in revenue or the billions of income where they just have tons of people labeling images for you. And the fact that there's now companies trying to come around and solve this labeling challenge on top of images is actually a really interesting solution to solve. So I think this is another one of these areas. There's like translations. There's a translation thing that Microsoft has done, translating languages together. That's an AI project. They have another AI project around interpreting PDFs and being able to OCR scan those things and put them into textual, code them so you can read JSON about what a scanned PDF looks like. And I think this is just adding to that library of these are common challenges organizations will be facing. And with the increase in images, video, other media, that it's not just straight text files anymore, you're going to see more investment from Microsoft in this one. So this is a very welcome addition, I think. I'll be curious to see where this goes and how this rolls out. But I very much could see this being like a standard off-the-shelf Power App that you would potentially roll into and integrate it deeply into Power Apps as well. So it makes it much easier to do these kind of things.
So they have like they have an image recognition, but it's very light, and it's not the way that this does. And I think the way that what Steve had hit on earlier, and where we're really just tapping into like any market that allows us to, anything that's open source, anything that'll like, and that's the way that Microsoft is really going. They want to make everything open source. And they want to integrate with other things that are open source. I mean, you look at like the GitHub acquisition, right? So that's just the mentality that they have today is really exciting. And this is just one of those pieces that's like launching them into that next direction.
Yep.
One of the things that's coming soon that you can see on the screen here is object detection and data classification. So like you were talking about previously, like those things are really important. And I wonder, like now, is Logue gonna continue to integrate with Power Apps the same way?
Yep.
Or is it going to be just image, classifications? And we, grab onto some other third-party tool for different types of classifications. Again, it's just one of those things that's it's coming as we get it, and we're excited to kind of see this progress.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a neat project. These are things to kind of keep your ear against. One of the things I think is difficult. Like, where do you apply this, Anthony? Like, where do you so if this is a Power App, if this is something I'm using today, like knowing that you can have an application that easily classifies images, how do I apply this to my business use case? Like where does this apply into? And that would be like kind of my question to you is like, where do you see this being used in Power Apps today as a solution?
So you're a producer guy, you're a video guy. I'm not sure. I know you have some really nice cameras, but I'm not sure if you actually use them for taking pictures. But
I do not. I use them for video.
Yeah. When you do take a picture, whether it's on your phone or it's on your camera, it has all this metadata that it comes with. It's just crazy. I mean, if you look at your phone, you look at the metadata, it even has like location tag to it, things like that.
Sure, yeah.
I think what this is going to do is bring that to the next level. It's going to say it has a leaf, it has somebody smiling, it has this and that. It's going to add a lot more metadata that makes it more searchable. That's where I see this kind of thing going more so than using the pictures to say, oh, this is a leaf, that's a fern. Like I think that that's really exciting. But I also think that from a long-term perspective and having like these huge archives of folders and folders of images that you don't want to search through or you don't want to categorize in folders.
Sure.
This is going to be the way that you're going to be able to search in the future. And this is the way that they're going to continue to create these classifications around images, because you think about it, an image speaks 1,000 words. I mean, although that's very cheesy to say, it is very true. And so if you can start to get those 100 words out of the 100 primary words out of that 1,000 words, make that searchable, that's where you're going to see some huge wins.
Interesting. I'm also thinking here like an application. So now that you have mentioned that, I'm kind of trying to interpolate between like where are we going with some of this AI stuff, and particularly, and I potentially could envision a way like in the world where classification things are relevant here, but also thinking through like, let's talk about Amazon for a moment. Like, just getting, again, they've got their own classifiers, but like if you have a production line or you're trying to bring out items, there's a lot of vision AI that's going on in general to be able to classify what is an image or object detection in an image. And if you look at their website, on their roadmap looks like object detection. So you have an image, but like what's in that image? Like, is this a leaf? Is this? And so if I think about like robots in the future, right, the way we can even compete with Amazon at the scale of what they're doing is to have robots and image things picking up items in a cart and pre-boxing them for you or starting to prepare things for you. I definitely could see this potentially would be used for that area, starting to train models to help you, do production line automation on things like that. So that maybe that's where we're going to kind of go with some of this stuff. I'm just trying to think of like how I, as a business user, where I can apply this.
Yep.
Support tickets and that side is also I see an area.
Interesting.
And I think Amazon, you have a good example because they have a very good example of this.
Yeah.
Amazon have a feature where you can scan an object and it says this is what you
this
want.
is your product you can go buy. Oh, yeah.
So submitting support tickets is gonna, maybe something's broken. We scan some equipment, some object. Large companies, it can.
Insurance companies, right?
A lot of money.
Well, insurance companies could. I mean, this. Okay. I'm thinking. I'm still spitballing with you guys here for a moment, but I'm thinking insurance. Like I've seen just advertisements or of submit your claim online. Right? You take a picture of your car and then you submit the claim. I'm assuming if you get enough of those images, you would know like, hey, this bumper's falling off. We could say this is you could start quantifying, hey, this is how much this thing actually costs to repair.
This model.
Yeah, it knows what the
bumper costs this much.
Yeah, exactly. And it'd say, oh,
like
this is a, maybe there's models there around that as well. If you classify those things and start tying
rough estimate.
Yeah, rough estimates, right? And that would be all automated at that point. So now it takes the emotion out of the people.
Older than 2008, it's like already totaled.
Exactly. Everything Michael drives, it's going to be instant totaled if you get in an accident. Yeah. Totally agree with that one. But I didn't even think of that, but that's another great application of this is where you're talking like classification on devices, sending these images away and being able to have, automatic assessments of your repair costs.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
To that point, people filling out forms make mistakes a lot.
Tons.
Right?
Yeah.
Whenever you have human input, you'll get a lot of mistakes. So if you start with a picture, it can pre-fill, guess what your car is.
That's cool. Yep. Agreed.
Hopefully kind of narrow down a lot of the mistakes, which ends up costing companies a lot of money just to sit there and manually fix this kind of stuff.
Well, even scanning like your credit card, like when you do like, I don't know if it's on my iPhone, I scan my credit card and it says take a picture of your card and it knows to go through the image and it pulls out the numbers for you. Like, oh, this is the numbers I think you were trying to type in. So
it kind of freaks me out because they're still taking a picture that's
still being stored
somewhere.
I know.
Use it sometimes. I sometimes don't. I don't know.
I think it's cool. I think that's how
I do.
I think there should be more like OCR, take a picture of something and start auto populating text in there. That's actually on your phone now. So if you look on your iPhone now, if you go to your camera app and you like, there's another button that you can press. There's an additional, looks like a QR code thing. Yep. It will actually start reading in real time text that's on a screen in an image.
And I feel like you can translate that.
Yeah, it'll turn it. It won't take a picture. It'll just take the text that it finds and write it down. I'm like, holy smokes! This is another place where like Lobe AI. This might be what we're seeing. We're going to see object detection and things, and you're going to take an image inside Power Apps. Take your camera out, take a picture of something, and I think this is a great use case for like receipts. I mean, that's like I think they've already got that AI detection inside a Power App where you do receipt payments and it'll scan the image and then tell you, here's how much the transaction cost. And then you can categorize it kind of stuff. Very cool options here.
AI Builder, there are certainly some limitations too. I mean, they do that for a reason because they want, it's a starter place. It's not Azure,
it's one of those gateway things. Like start here, see how cool this is. Does this work for your needs? And you're like, yes, it does. And then you're like, okay, now we're gonna go full bore. You pay for all the Azure services to get it going, but it could do a lot more than I think what the demo does.
Yeah, and last thing before we change is you hit on one really big point earlier. Is I think what AI is gonna do is determine does this person need to speak with a person, or is it okay that I handle this through a robot? Just cutting down on the sheer number of tickets, like we were just talking about, and cutting down on the number of, it's like sifting through your emails, right? Like which ones are good, which ones are not good, and which ones are worth talking to, which ones are, should we send to like maybe somebody that's just starting their job and this would be a good, place for them, versus maybe something that's more like tier 3, tier 4. I think that kind of, classification type of thing, when somebody's interacting with whatever it might be, that's where we're going to see a lot of that go is be able to push that in a direction before it hits a human.
I feel like there's a lot of, you're actually speaking to the point of a little bit around virtual agents, what that kind of does today.
I didn't want to say it. Yeah,
I know you were alluding to it, but it speaks to a lot of what's happening there. And as a person who ran a call center, there's actually a lot of common, so you put information as a call center, you kind of put information out on the internet, right? You kind of, here's our facts, FAQs, you do those intentionally to start pointing people to the answers. But people aren't always able to find their answers quickly. And so to have some kind of, to your point, an AI that's in front of this, that's doing a little bit more, what are you looking for? And trying to help direct where your question is and try to relate that to source material that's already there. As a call center person who would run a call center, I would not focus on every single question. Instead, my focus was look at the incoming questions I have, figure out which ones are the most common, and then write documentation around answers to those questions. And then document and publicize those answers and point everyone to the same location. I think this works I'm talking about call centers for like large corporations, but this works in every use case. This could work for your internal reporting. This could work for internal process, anything. Everything can use this kind of routing of information to people because there's only one Anthony and Anthony can only do so much in a day. Why not offload a lot of these extra answers and questions to just write the documentation, write it up, get it done. Here's a little video, boom, we're off and running. And now you can point people to these, learning areas so they can get educated about what they need to learn for their job, their business, or whatever. Very cool.
And I think this just like takes it to that next level of tech, because
Yeah.
it's like, okay, so you can't, maybe you're describing it the way that you think is important, but me from a bot perspective, I don't understand what you're saying. And then take a picture of what your issue is with your
True.
computer. Boom, scans it, understands it, and maybe it's on your computer, or maybe it's maybe you have a warranty on your speakers, or on on your water heater.
Yep.
Something like that, where it's like, just take a picture of it, and what's happening. It'll
Ooh.
detect like there's a leak, and then it
Here's the
starts
model number.
calculating,
Like,
we talked
take
about
a
with the
picture of the
car,
label. We'll know when it was built, all that kind of stuff. And there you don't have to go searching for it. I like it.
Yeah.
Cool stuff.
And they have all the UPC scanners and all that stuff out there too. So that's all good stuff. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to this next page.
Yeah.
I think this is gonna like blow our minds. We have 2 more pages that I want to get through, and then we'll switch over to more Power BI type of things. And so this one is really, really exciting. Let me just pull this up here. All right. So just from being like a developer perspective, both of you guys are like these like super DAX nerds, and I've been learning a little bit along the way. But like being able to like just make comments, as simple that is huge. Now that it's they're threaded comments too, so that's even more exciting. Let me zoom into that, what that looks like.
So this is really interesting. I have not done a ton of Power Automates. Most of my stuff, I'm much more Azure centric. So if I'm automating things, I'm doing things in like Azure or pipelines or stuff like that. This, I was playing around with Tommy yesterday in our user group. I was following along. He was giving me some flows to import. And so I'm working these flows. Comments would be incredibly helpful, and more descriptions about what you're doing in each of these steps, I think, is very relevant. And this is a great feature add, I think, here in general.
I mean, if you look at that right bar, it looks exactly like Office. So I think that's the cool part too. You don't have to relearn anything. It's not this new comment box that you don't understand kind of what's going to happen when you click reply or whatever the case. It doesn't look like maybe there's at mentions yet, now that I think about it. But with that, it looks the exact same as Office. And whether those teams are working together or not, I'm not sure. But it looks great. And it feels just like what we're already used to. And I use comments all the time in Word, in Excel, and PowerPoint, and all that good stuff constantly. And I'm tagging people. It just keeps everything in one spot, and it makes it really simple to consume.
Yeah, having me and Anthony co-authoring a Power App and solution, which uses Power Automate.
Yeah.
This would have been very helpful a couple of months ago. I'll say that. No, but we had that. We had OneNote, we had task boards where we had to update, and there's a lot of calls going back and forth. You didn't really think about it, but something like this comments would have saved us a lot of time, and really cool,
so simple,
as you say. Yeah, such a simple little ad, but
it feels like this is a precursor. To me, again, I haven't read the article on this particular feature at all, though. But like, to me, this looks like a precursor to what you might find in doing collaborative editing on a flow together, right? You're both in the same environment, and then you can look at the stuff, and then I don't know if you can you co-collaborate on development yet?
Quick one thing that's really exciting, and to Steve's point about planner boards, OneNotes.
Yep.
So if I take a quick note here, I could link back to that very specifically. When you look at this spot here, that you're able to go back to that individual. If you had to add more context around it, you don't want to have paragraphs in here or bullet points and stuff. That's where you can link back to something that maybe would make more sense.
Has the notes for it.
Co-authoring with I'm an architect working with engineers, and they're building something. I just go in, I take a look, and I'm like, oh, sweet, like this is really cool. I'm gonna update that and give them either kudos or say, try turning this into a loop versus a switch, things like that. However, to your point, next slide. This is my last slide that I want to.
Okay, this is a good one. Well, I was thinking more for Power Automate. So Power Automate doesn't have co-authoring yet. That's not something you can do together at this point.
You can.
Oh, you can.
Partially.
It's getting there. I think we're getting closer to like being able to co-author. Like that makes a lot more sense.
So when you look at this, it has presence. You can literally just tell that somebody's in there.
Yeah.
That's it.
Perfect.
So the cool thing about that, Steve and I collaborating on that, the couple of flows and the, that we were working through.
Yeah.
If I were to saw that he was in it, and this actually happened a couple times. So we would be working at night, and I'd say, hey, I'm gonna go work on this. He'd say, hey, I'm gonna go work on that. And we'd go our separate ways. And then, all of a sudden there's, you're trying to save, and then there's an issue. But here now you're going to get a notification saying that there's somebody in there. So here you can see that there's 3 people that are, working on this Power Automate.
Yes.
And then here, once you start to save, it's going to say, hey, so what's your choice here? You got 3 of them. And then beyond that, you can still have the comments that we were talking about. That won't override anything. So you can
Correct.
actually add comments in while people are,
That makes sense.
making their modifications.
Yeah.
So that, I think, to me is really important, because if let's say you're not sharing your screen and you're just watching the person build or whatever the case may be, but you're adding in comments while they're talking through it, that to me is again super powerful. It's just the lack of communication that we had before that's now kind of coming to light.
Yeah.
This is just such an easy way to do it.
I like this. This reminds me a lot of what I do in like Databricks, where in Databricks I have multiple people in the same Jupyter notebook and we're writing code together. I can be in one code block, they can be in a one above me, and I can see what they're writing. It's updating in real time. And I think as we're moving more to this digital space in general, I think you're going to see a lot more co-authoring requirements. I think people are expecting it now that we're going to be co-authoring documents.
Yeah.
All the Microsoft products like Word, Excel, all those are now starting to get co-authoring as well. And I mean, back when I was in master's programs, right, it was really helpful to have remote people working together in the same document. You could more easily work together in the same document. So I like this stuff. I think this is going to be really good.
And to Mike's point, a lot of the things we see, especially at Ignite when they're brand new features,
Yeah.
we can take them as indications on direction as well.
Agreed.
It's not going to be the final, this is all you can do.
Yeah.
You see where they're going, and it gives you an idea of Microsoft's thoughts. Not always. Sometimes they'll have some ideas and they won't pan out as well. But most of the time, something like this, you can see this growing, and you can see a lot more collaboration coming. And I
Mm-hmm.
think there's been several things which is all about collaboration and empowering people to work together. Something us in the Power BI world, this would be great in Power BI reports.
I was going to ask.
One day.
Maybe one day,
But
but it's
But
coming
not
to
possible in
it's
Power
coming to the
BI,
other
right?
parts of the platform. So I had to imagine, like, again, this is to Steve's point. This is directional, right? What do we see? What is the trend happening? What's going on here? Like, this is a great example, and I think the fact that Power Apps is really pushing into this co-authoring experience, I think, is awesome. I really think this is going to be a very big win for developers in Power Apps. I think this is a super nice feature.
There are people that are saying I refuse to work with Power Apps because it doesn't have co-authoring. I'm not of that nature, but I think
Mhm.
that, that's fine. But now it does have that. So it's like, whoa, like this is like really opening the door to these pro devs that are saying, that they need specific things. Like I think that Microsoft is truly listening to them, and that's why this came out in the fashion that it did.
I'd ask you a question around that one. So you say pro devs. I think pro devs are not trying to use a UI like this. I think pro devs are more code based, would be my opinion. Would a pro dev really want to be using like more of a GUI like this, or would they want to just write code to do it?
I think so. What you can do is you can start with an interface of Power Apps, but you can still extend it.
Yeah.
There's the PC app that you can extend it with, and that's where they're going to say, I can extend this with Pro Dev, and that's
Gotcha.
not going to be,
Okay.
yeah, that's not citizen developer. So they still have a place, with low code, no code platforms.
Yeah.
Specifically, I mean, they continue to add this, and actually they just integrated now custom pages with Dynamics. So now you can incorporate your Canvas apps inside of your Dynamics pages, but you can also add
Nice.
JSON and JavaScript in some fashion to it. I haven't worked with it yet. I think it's in preview yet,
Mhm.
but there's some type of more collaboration now. It's good. You're going to need those Fusion Dev, or it's not less. So you're going to have this place like we talked about earlier. Actually, this is a good point to kind of take a step here. Is in the Fusion Dev kind of world, right? There's all these different people that play their different parts. We're closer to the problems, and we're now able to solve the problems ourselves with low code, no code, at least initially.
Mm-hmm.
And what that's going to do is that creates that world for citizen developers. That's going to be your entry level. But then there's the functional consultant, which understands almost everything out of the box, understands the limitations, where it's going, how it's going to get there, and then ultimately it says, well, this is how far I can take it out of the box. Then we have pro devs who are going to take it then beyond that out of the box. That's beyond functional. So that's where I see like there's these kind of 3 tiers, but there's even beyond that too, where in some of those blend. But ultimately, that's where we're seeing that Fusion Dev really coming together. Then there's leadership, there's stakeholders, there's all those other things that kind of make up a true team. But when it comes to tech, it's really exciting to now open the door to custom dev in something like this, which then allows them to kickstart a prototype get something really quick, but then still be able to customize it down the road.
So this is interesting because I found an article that was talking specifically around what does this Fusion Dev kind of look like, and then Microsoft actually had produced an ebook around the Fusion development approach and what does that look like, and it's really kind of, I think the article talks a little bit around like removing that glass ceiling. Like there's this low code portion where you kind of get to a level and you need to do something advanced, and maybe you hit a threshold. We've hit a point where we've maxed out, and so at some point you hit a glass wall of like, we're done, we've gotten as far as we can go, we don't have any more tools to get beyond that. And what I think you're talking about here is there's this level of, well, we're going to remove that glass wall and we're going to allow you to go even further beyond that. So once after you've done the low code solution portion, you can then go even beyond and start doing full code and adding other things. And I think, I don't know if this is really relates to our co-authoring experience here, but there's PowerFX that's going to be kind of more integrated to, and that's more on the beyond, high dev, more code solutions there.
Certainly, and PowerFX, they just opened up to be open source as well, following the
Super cool
the trend of all of what we're talking about. So now they're opening that to open source, and that's where, again, we're going to see that space explode. I mean, it's going to be hard to keep up with it once that the ball gets rolling there. They just opened to open source very recently. So now people are going to be able to extend that in the ways that they see necessary. And then we're going to start to see these things get published constantly. The number of people that are citizen devs that are getting into the kind of blending over into that space of coding a little bit. And same thing with pro devs now kind of getting into that more functional consultant. Same thing. We're going to see these people contributing to that open source. And I think that space is really going to blow up, and it's going to be the way that it's going to explode is going to be massive. And I can't fathom where that's going to go right now. I have ideas, but I think if you look at the past of other, I guess, coding languages like Python, when that really blew up, or I'm trying to think of some other ones that are recent.
Well, I mean,
you look at it.
The common, I mean, so your common ones are like everything web dev technology kind of things, right? You have like, your .NET, your C sharps. Those are the kind of like your standard versions out there. Then you have Python, very open. A lot. Every school, if you go anything for a master's in any kind of computer science, you're doing lots of Python. It's just a very good general programming language, and I think this will be another one of these. The programming language concepts are fairly straightforward. Where I think things are kind of becoming interesting from a programming language standpoint, you have other companies like Apple's doing Swift, another kind of language. So you're now starting to see like these hybrids of like we're taking the best parts of different languages and kind of molding them together. And there's also a lot of this abstraction. So as you use these different languages, they're writing low level code, but you're seeing some abstractions above that do specific things. In general, I just like functional programming languages. I think that's just how I learned. VBA was one of my, my pillars of when I started writing code stuff. I learned a lot of concepts there. It was very interesting to me. So it'll be interesting to see where these other, PowerFX kind of goes, and how it helps enhance and allow you to build more rich applications across all the Power Platform at this point.
And I feel like maybe I even have like an example of that here somewhere. I don't know if I do, but in either case, it is really exciting, and I think it'll be interesting to see where that goes and how fast it gets there. Because I think we're at the tip, or just like the beginning of what that bell curve is going to look like. And it's not even, I guess, barely the beginning of that, because it just opened up recently. But I think this is a good place if we want to switch gears and talk about Power BI. I do have a slide on it if we want to refer to that. Otherwise, if you guys want to take it away.
Did you have one more slide? There was a pricing thing I think we needed to talk about.
I didn't.
I think that's
I just know
the
that
big
there's
news
so
of
much
Ignite
we
here.
can talk about.
This I think was like for me, this is one of the largest announcements that I thought going on here. And I think this is going to be very hotly debated, figuring out, does this make sense for organizations? Where do we apply it? When to apply it? So I think this is a really good talking content piece here. So curious your guys' thoughts on this. Let's overview the feature. Anthony, what did this mean? What did this change from a licensing standpoint?
Sure. I mean, there's two licensing options previously: per app, per user, per month, and then there's going to be unlimited apps per user per month. And so there's really those two options when you're looking at premium. Otherwise, you're in the O or M licenses, and you're getting the standard connectors for free, and that's pretty standard. But when you start to look at the premium, it used to be a really big bite that you'd have to take,
Yeah.
if you wanted to use premium connectors.
Sure.
Now what this is doing is kind of bridging the gap between, having a big bite versus really dipping your toes and understanding, is this the investment that I want to make? And I think
Yes.
that's where this is going to bridge that gap. It's not necessarily cheap. It's not made to be cheap because, like you and I have talked about in the past, it's not something that it's very, very new in terms of Power Apps being out, of how much resources it takes in terms of, just the back end of everything and being able to run these apps and host them. But also I guess it's just the thought of, now how do we bridge that gap and allow the people who are kind of timid to get into this space to just dip their toes enough to understand, is this something that's worth investing in?
Yes. And I one thing I think I want to point out here that I really like, and this is a play I think out of the Power BI licensing model as well. When you buy Power Apps licenses, you typically buy them on the Microsoft Office 365 environment. So you go like admin.microsoft.com, you go out and you buy your admin, your Power Apps licensing there. That's a different purchasing group, technically, versus what's happening in Azure. So where I work with the data pieces, a lot of what I build infrastructure-wise is all in Azure. So if I'm going to turn on Power BI Premium or embed things for my clients or embed things with, to external users, Power BI Premium inside Azure is a much better solution because I control all the costs. My data is there, my synapse there. Everything else I'm buying is inside the Azure arena. And so I think there's a different purchasing group between what is the Azure group versus what it's the Office 365 group. And sometimes in organizations, you'll actually have two different management teams that are managing them separately. So this is another alternative for you to get in and purchase licensing through potentially a different group. There may be a use case where you need this for a small subset of individuals, which again, if you think about, like, maybe this is a team-based solution, right? A department needs a solution around that. And so they need to control costs inside their department. And if they built an app that's valuable enough for their department, this is a good way of breaking apart billables and letting billables be done in small chunks across the organization based on the need and demand of these apps. May not make sense for us to go out and have everything roll up through Office 365, which may be managed or governed at the IT level. So I think this is a really good solution. I think this adds a lot more flexibility to the options. It also solidifies, I think, our role as helping people negotiate what is the most cost-effective option to run this. Because this is also going to be like we're adding another licensing piece here, and Microsoft has fairly complex licensing patterns that you need experts to kind of help you figure out and walk through if you just want to learn faster, kind of thing. You could probably figure it out on your own. It's not saying you can't, it's not impossible, but you can go to other people and figure out like what's the right scenario for what you're trying to build.
Yep.
I feel with this, companies, it might take a bit to really understand. It's hard to gauge maybe how much people are using your apps, especially if you've never really been measuring this before. I think you'll get there. I mean, I think companies will start, as with anything new, especially with the licensing. It's going to take a bit, but at the same day, more options are never a bad thing in terms of when it comes to pricing. It means that there's more options for you to choose from. Might be a bit more complicated, and as to Mike's point, you probably want some help, and there's a lot of people out there to help you with that. But
3 of them are on this phone call.
Yeah, definitely getting there. I mean, they've done this with Power BI. There's quite a few ways to license Power BI, and they've been adding, and it's a good thing, I think, to have those options.
Agreed.
This option might not be the best for your company, but for certain companies, I think it definitely will be at those.
So let me ask one question to Anthony and Steve on this one. Let me direct this one towards Anthony for now. But like, do you see this? Is this an option so this is an opt, kind of pay as you go? The number of users that show up to use this. Does this allow us to have like a dev test prod kind of environment where, I can have, so this is what we do in Power BI from an equivalent standpoint, right? I may need to build a workspace or two that uses premium features. And what I may do is there's a smaller audience of people that need access to that information or those reports in dev and test. And so what I'll do is potentially put them on an Azure SKU, smaller payments, not used as heavily, but we'll use those smaller end SKUs just to kind of prove out what we're trying to develop. And then when we go
Right.
to production, we want to save as much capacity or compute power for production things. And then we'll kick you over to a new workspace that's on prod, essentially, a P1 SKU, a much more robust SKU for production stuff. So is this a similar kind of scenario? Do you think this could be used in a similar way, Anthony?
Yes. So the difference, I mean, there's really, the interesting thing is that it's very simple to turn on your billing policy and turn it off. So
Sure.
if you were to start in the space of, I want to just test this out, and then that turned into your dev or that turned into your prod, whatever the
Yeah.
case may be, you can turn it on and off through your billing policy. That's one piece that is
Ooh.
very simple to do.
Is this
Yes,
hourly
very,
billing?
very simple.
Like you could do this almost like a day by day kind of thing where you could turn it on for a
You
little
can,
bit and then
yep,
turn it off.
yep,
Oh,
yep.
interesting. Okay, so I like that. I like the control again. Oh man, this is why I like the Azure stuff. This is the same. This is the same story I use when I'm doing Power BI. I'm like, hey, you can just turn on reporting for like a couple hours a day and then turn it off when you're done and save some
Right.
costs.
Yep.
Interesting.
And so it's only going to charge you for what you're using. And if your user has already, opened up the
Yeah.
app, it'll charge you for that whole month. So
Yeah.
it
Correct.
kind of depends on how you're going to use the
So
app.
it's
Um,
really on number of users. That's really the decision point here for you, not
right.
time running
Yep.
the service.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. So it's a little bit, yeah. So that's how they run that piece. Beyond that, if you're going to have a dev staging prod or however,
Yeah.
however you would run that, and a lot of times you have many sandboxes that kind of come along with that in the solution platform.
Sure.
But with that, those people that are going to be in dev and staging, they're more than likely you just license them with a per user, license. And then what that does, I mentioned it on the screen here, layered licensing supported. So that means those users are still unique in terms of opening that app, but they won't be charged for that consumption. They already have a license, so it's layered in the terms of it will consume their
Ah,
license that they already have versus
gotcha.
charging them for
Another 10
something
bucks.
additional.
Gotcha.
Yep.
So this okay, this is good to know because this is like a caveat that's going on here. If I've bought, and again, what's the price for unlimited apps per user? It's at 20 bucks a month now.
Yes.
So it's 20 bucks a month. So you
Yep.
pay 20 bucks per user, unlimited apps for that user. If that $20 user shows up to this app, they've already got access. So it will use the $20 a month licensing and not charge you an extra $10 just because that person is showing up. So that's what the layered licensing is meaning, correct?
Correct. Yep. And so
Cool.
that it recognizes it. I mean, on the
I
back
like
end,
that.
I don't know if it's at the beginning of the month or the end of the month that it charges you. Still all of this stuff is new. I would assume at the end of the month, but
Sure.
in either case, that's where it's gonna, identify, does this person have a license? And the same thing goes for, I believe it's guests, if you're going to be working with guests as well. Some of
Excellent.
these things are kind of still, to be TBD.
Sure.
But when a guest, you have them working with your Power App, they're already licensed, then it won't consume, it won't charge you for that person. Same thing is that's how it works right now. So I mean, I think they're going to be inheriting as much of everything that's out there as it can, but then kind of pinpointing, this specific environment that we're going to charge anybody that doesn't have a license. It still allows them to use it. So it's actually really simple in terms of opening it up to people, saying put it on this card for finance because it's a finance app, and there's no longer a need for IT to be charged, a chargeback to happen, go back to finance, all this paperwork, whatever that needs to happen there. It really mitigates all of that. Where like you've experienced in the past in terms of Azure, now there's different controls that are in place, and it's more granular that you can start to set that up specifically with the resource groups and such.
Awesome. I like that a lot. Cool.
There's so much more here, and I don't even cover everything on on this slide.
That's okay.
Well,
This is
this
But
it's a good
conference was
start.
several days long.
It was. There's a lot of conference things going on.
yeah,
Any other things? So we're right around 53 minutes in. So we got about another 7 minutes or so to be done. Any other kind of topics? I'm looking at the chats. I'm not seeing any additional questions come through. So any other kind of thoughts? Anything else that we want to talk about? Oh, this is a good one. I like that you brought this one up.
I'll let you guys chat on this because like I'm only dipping my toes in this space, but there's some heavy stuff here.
I think there's a lot that came out with Teams and with the integration as general. General availability with some connectors. Teams is becoming more and more the place, and I think me and Anthony have spoken about this before. We see the Power Platform as our different sections with Power BI, with Power Apps, with Power Automate, all interacting. And Teams is this lovely universe where all of this can actually live. you don't need to open a browser anymore to visit any of these, to use your apps,
This
to
is
use
smart.
your BI. You can use it all in Teams. It's a great tool, and I'm loving it more and more.
I,
Being able to pin specific reports is huge. That's awesome to certain teams, and
yes.
a lot going on here.
I think you're going to find in general, Teams is going to be like the central spot. So think of Teams as like it's your communication hub. And even
They
now, I
say
mean,
it's the
this
new
is
Windows.
direction. Yeah, it directionally. I mean, if you look at like what integration, so it's like a single sign-on environment, right? I'm signing on with my Active Directory identity. It's automatically pulling me in, and then now all these services are opening up to me because now it knows who I am and all the services that link together, the teams I'm a part of, the SharePoints that I'm in. Like it's becoming really this really rich central hub to a lot of things. Uh, Almost to a bit of the chagrin of myself because Teams becomes quite a memory hog on my computer because of all the things that it's doing. But it's like a browser that you company log into, and it just does everything. I think you're going to see a lot more companies spending time and developing whatever app they're building. I think there's going to be deeper integrations directly into Teams with just any app dev. I think app dev is in general. There's a whole app dev thing coming out for that as well. And then I don't know if they pushed it too much at Ignite, but I was a part of the Microsoft Ignite AltSpace environments. And so AltSpace and Mesh are this kind of like the ability to putting avatars inside real meetings. So to be a little bit less like a watching a video all the time, but actually having like real people in a room where you can walk around, explore things. I think potentially that has a lot of interesting implications to what Teams is going to be doing in the near future. So really thought that that was
Definitely.
really cool.
There's a comment from our YouTube, and for sure something I was going to bring up from Armand. Goals is the 2022 product, and there was a lot in Goals over Ignite.
And this is goals for Power BI you're talking specifically,
For
right?
goals for Power BI specifically.
Okay.
So we had a new scorecard visual in Power BI, so integrating that into desktop.
Yep.
And again, a lot of this is indicative because I think they're showing that they're putting a lot of investment in these goals. A huge one is for Power Automate. We had a couple of Power BI actions in Power Automate, and there hasn't been too much. There's been one or two added. All of a sudden, there's about 5 or 6
Yeah.
new Power Automate actions around Power BI. So really integrating that. When our goals are hit, our goals are changed, someone checks into a goal, this can trigger a Power Automate, or you can have actions to update goals. So integration I see with the Power BI goals across there's a huge need or a huge use case for goals in Power Apps, because goals is one of these things where we can write back, and it's really good for users to see our Power BI dashboard, maybe interact with a Power Automate in our Power App, and have this write back and update people exactly how they're doing to their reports. So a really, really cool update, I think, and shows that goals Microsoft is looking to push and upgrade, I
I
think.
like the idea of goals. I've played with it a little bit. I'm still a little hesitant. It hasn't quite sold me yet on the idea of goals at this point. So I feel like I need a little bit more. So it's wearing on me. It's definitely people are excited about it. I think
I think there's that excitement, and I think there's that direction.
Yeah.
I agree, and when they released it, it seemed cool. I didn't have any use cases,
That's
and
where I'm at right now.
it's
So this is
it's one of those.
that's kind of one of my things right now. So I like the fact that their actions now evolve because I think that means there's
Yeah.
now a richer level of APIs on the back end as
Mhm.
well. So I feel like that's a good move there as well. But one thing I'd also echo here too is like from the goals perspective, it makes a lot more sense for um again, I'm just a big fan of APIs. I think things start getting used when you can start hitting things and doing things externally to it. So the fact that I can add a goal or update things with a Power Automate now, I think makes a lot more sense.
Those goals, integrating them outside of Power BI and letting you use them across, I think it's very, very useful.
Tommy from the
Um,
Explicit Measure podcast, he's all about them. Like he's bought in. He's like trying to roll them out in his company. So I'm looking for maybe a more best case use case scenarios. How we're using it, where we're applying it, where we're finding value from these things. Obviously it's there, but I'll be looking forward to seeing a lot more of that.
yeah, we'll see how that advances. It sounds like they're they're looking to push this, and there's going to be a lot more investment in it if they had so much in this last Ignite to that one tool. So I'm
Awesome.
excited to see where it goes.
Any other kind of key announcements there that you're going to see from Teams or integration with Teams things?
I think those teams were quite good. For me, the other big ones, I mean, we'll skip over them, but hybrid tables is a pure Power BI one.
Oh,
I mean,
I'm a fan of that one for sure. I love that
that's
idea.
massive. Yeah, it's a great tool.
So
they announced it a while ago.
Explain for us, like for people who are kind of just starting out here, what is a hybrid table? What does that do?
So put simply, and for those, maybe not so in depth in the Power BI world,
Yeah.
but when we're talking massive data sets, it takes a lot of memory, and it can take a lot of time to run through these data sets to get your results, to get your KPIs and your measures back.
Totally.
And especially in terms of refreshing the data when you're importing data into your report, if there's a lot of data there, it can take a long time. So, we have this idea of putting in partitions. So to lower that a bit, each day, we just add that day's data into our existing data set. So this is really helpful. But with hybrid tables, it takes that to the next step, where if you're trying to look at today's data, obviously when you're importing once a day, because we've got a lot of data, today we're not going to see that data.
Yeah.
This hybrid table now lets us go back to our data source. Just for that little bit of today's data, we can see that in live time.
Yep.
So you get the benefit of the speed of importing most of the data.
Yep.
The speed of import for doing it daily, but then the real-time data by hitting the data source directly. So it's a complicated system and the back end, and I know the teams worked really hard, and it's a breakthrough, I think, in data availability, and we're going to see
I totally agree.
billions of rows of data in quick time. It's pretty fantastic.
I like it a lot.
Achievement.
And I think this is one of the weaknesses I see of just in general direct query is when you're querying your data, you're trying to go grab information from a source system. So the source system must be highly tuned to return results very quickly within a second or two, or even less, right? Even faster if you can. And so the amount of data, if you can limit more and more of that data to only like a couple hours. So imagine throughout the day, you have 4, 5, 6, 7 refreshes throughout the day. Every hour, I'm getting a little bit more data. I'm able to append it into the import table, and then I'm only having an hour or two of missing data for like that live data. So when I refresh the browser, it's only grabbing at least an hour or two of information. That is much faster for your SQL Server or the backend to go grab that little subset of information as opposed to having to go grab a whole day or week or month. And so I think if you talk to like the Microsoft CAT team, that's their high-end Power BI consulting team to help big customers. They're always dealing with direct query challenges because they want live data or they want data to be updated. But then you have this really weakness of the back end is just not as performant as analysis services. Duh, it's just not going to be. It's analysis services is an amazing product, and that's where you want to try and lift as much of your data into the import mode as possible. So really smart thinking here. I think they're doing some great improvements. And from what I observe, there's a lot of announcements on Twitter. A lot of the Power BI team is moving over to the Synapse team. So it also sounds to me like there's a lot of investment happening in that Synapse space that's going to make it the de facto, this is where we do data. And I'm hoping they're going to mature more of this grow up story from I develop things in Power BI reports, and we're going to mature them into enterprise grade systems inside the Synapse world. So I think there's going to be a lot more interesting developments here in 2022 around this space.
I think I agree with that. And there's the new Synapse connector was announced as well.
That's true too.
Which is a big one.
Yeah.
And
you get access to everything. Spark and SQL and like all the stuff shows up now.
A lot of announcements around Synapse.
Tons.
I think that is the space to watch. I think that's where you'll see Microsoft investing. You can, as I say, a lot of these are give you hints at directions Microsoft is moving in.
Agreed.
And I think it's quite obvious that is a massive one.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to see what they roll out. I think there's going to be a lot of improvements in the next couple of years. So quite excited to see what they get out there, and that integration with Power BI and the Power Platform, I think, as well. I know they had some Synapse and Dataverse, I believe, announcements as well. So really looking as they're unifying a lot of different kind of areas and products into one.
Totally agree. And with that, I think we're kind of right around at time. So, guys, thank you very much for the chat around Ignite. This is fun stuff. I totally enjoy talking about these features here. I like picking your brain, Anthony, on the Power Apps thing. It's something I use, I dabble in, but I'm not like a super expert in it. And it's kind of interesting seeing your perspective on where you see the movement going there for Power Apps. So I really like that. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, this is a space that it's one of those things you have to spend a lot of time in to keep up. And if you're not in it every day, then you got to know somebody that is.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm glad I know you. Awesome. Well, with that, I think we're at a wrap. Anthony, give us a closeout, and we'll roll for this user group.
This is not one of those special PowerPoints, but I will say just thanks to everybody on the call here in terms of just being able to share your passion with everybody else. I mean, that's one of the things that drives everybody to come to these kind of conversations. So again, I've been able to say my piece around Power, apps, Power Automate, and those types of things. But again, hearing you guys kind of close out on some Power BI, I was doing some research as we were talking. Even just I'm hearing so many of these different words and hearing them in sentences that like connect to my world, and I'm like, how do I like do more in this space? So hearing you guys, be passionate about that, it's really exciting. So thanks again, and as always, I think we should come back and do some demos. I think that's what we should do next.
I like this. I think we should start picking out some key features here as these things hit preview. Let's do some demos in the future around all these key features that are coming out, so people can see them in action and rolling. I think that's a great action item. So we'll huddle internally. We'll figure out what is the right blend of demos coming along in this one, and we'll push out some demos.
Cool.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Well, thank you very much. We'll see you guys probably next month, and we'll catch you around. Appreciate it. All right, bye.
Thanks. See ya.